Welcome to another episode of the Be Unstoppable podcast. Today's guest is a true architect of the UK music and broadcasting landscape. Someone whose influence has quietly but powerfully shaped the way we experience music for decades. From her groundbreaking days at Kiss 100, where she transformed the station into a cultural powerhouse and gave underground black music a platform that would change the face of UK radio, to her current role as BBC Director of Music, overseeing iconic brands like Radio 1, 1Extra, Radio 2, as well as massive events like Glastonbury, Lorna Clarke is a visionary leader in every sense of the word. Her career is a masterclass in resilience, innovation, and unwavering dedication to her craft. She's discovered and nurtured some of the most respected names in broadcasting, as well as being a visionary behind the electric Proms, creating a stage where iconic artists delivered some of their most unforgettable and genre-defining performances. Under her leadership, we've seen record-breaking Glastonbury broadcasts, game-changing diversity initiatives, and a continued ability to balance musical nostalgia with cutting-edge new talent. But behind those accolades is a story of grit, determination, and an unstoppable passion for music. From breaking barriers as a woman of colour in a male-dominated industry to navigating the pressures of leadership at the highest level, Lorna Clarke has proven time and again that she's not only a trailblazer, but a leader who leaves an indelible mark wherever she goes. She's a 2024 Women in Music recipient and was celebrated with the Since 93 Award in 2024, further cementing her legacy as a trailblazer in the music industry. An icon of UK broadcasting and someone whose legacy will continue to influence generations to come. Today, we're diving deep into her extraordinary journey, the lessons she's learned, and the wisdom she has to share. She is someone I'm truly fortunate to have in my corner, someone who's not only championed the Power Up initiative that we've spoken about in previous episodes, but has also spoken my name with respect and support in rooms I haven't even stepped into yet. It's an honor to have her here. Please welcome to the Be Unstoppable podcast, the incredible Lorna Clarke. And remember, Unstoppable crew, you have the power to choose your path in life, but always choose to be unstoppable. Lorna, welcome.
What an intro. I literally can't follow that. Thank you. You are very generous.
It's the life that you've lived. We're just literally speaking about the life that we've lived. So, I want to jump straight into this. Growing up and family roots. Take us back to the beginning. What was life like for you growing up? How did your upbringing and your family shape your love for music?
Well, that bit I'm still figuring out. The how it's shaped, I'm still figuring out. I think that's an ongoing conversation. But the factual side, who am I and where did I come from, is pretty straightforward. There's lots of people I will know, you will know, that had the same sort of background as me. So born in Hendon, but very quickly moved from Hendon in London to Wembley. Went to school in Neasden, not a very good school, Neasden High School. And Wembley, I grew. Most of my formative years were on a council estate, Chalk Hill, Wembley Park. This is before the big refurb of Wembley Stadium and all of that. Yeah. I mean, it was nothing like that.
And as the kids would say, it was like the ends. It was the ends.
It was the ends for us. And
Truly the ends.
It had a really brilliant market, a Sunday market, where all of those bougie shops and coffee shops are now as you walk down to the stadium. So I spent a lot of time there. But living on the estate, we had nothing better to compare it to. So as far as we were concerned, it was really cool. Yeah. And even now, as a proper grown-up woman, it's like those, just from a property point of view, those estates, they were properly well built. They were great. They were like, we never complained about the cold in the winter. They were amazing. It was kind of quite high design, with like walkways that connected all the tower blocks together. Later that became a problem. Yeah. Because if you were attacked, someone would literally run from one end of the estate to the other just by running through the walkways.
Of course.
They had to block it off because it was like their kind of utopian dream didn't quite work. But basically, I was very happy there. I knew all my neighbours. My parents were hardworking parents. My dad was a reluctant postman who was kind of on permanent nights, so I never saw him really. But he did that so he could provide for his family. But of course, at the time, I didn't realise like how much a burden it is to work nights all the time.
Yeah.
So when we went on holiday, he was recovering at home. It wasn't a holiday. My mum worked hard. She was an office manager for like quite smart brands that again I didn't really know anything about. She used to work for Rolls-Royce. She used to work for Tiffany lamps, but she always had second or third jobs. So one of her second jobs was to help an aunt who had a working man's cafe. And that meant that she'd have to get in there for 5:30 a.m., help them out, set up, then go and do her office job. If she wasn't doing that, she was doing cleaning. Or the best job was working in McVitie's biscuit factory. So
lots of biscuits would
broken
come home
biscuits
with
at the end of the week, boxes and boxes of them. But basically, I think that's where, and it's not unusual, but that's where that ethic for hard work, if you want something, you're going to have to do it. So yeah, I had to have a paper round. I had to have Saturday jobs because I wanted to buy my own fashion, wanted to buy clothes, wanted to buy music. There wasn't anywhere else to get it.
Yeah.
So we were pretty self-sufficient. I mean, as a young woman growing up, although I was number 2 in the family, I was always treated as the eldest. I don't know.
How many siblings do you have?
There's myself, an older sister, a younger sister, and a brother.
Okay.
So, you know, we're all quite different. None of us are in music or broadcast, but yeah, I was always treated as, I always sort of acted as the oldest and treated as the oldest. But growing up, I was definitely not odd, but different. I mean, you know, I just didn't want to do what anyone else wanted to do.
Where did that come from?
I don't know. I mean, the perils of where I lived meant that my history could have been very different. I could have been a teenage parent. That was quite normal for my friends and people I knew. They all survived. They're all doing brilliantly. Like it's not that. It's just that's not what I wanted.
Yeah.
Lots of people didn't really have the choice about kind of further education or anything like that. I thought I didn't want further education. So when I, you know, got to 17, I was like, I need to earn money. I need to get out there and do stuff. And I did go straight into work, and I worked for the civil service in a dole office. And I was surrounded by people who they worked, but that was just a means to something else. No one wanted to work there because of the job.
Yeah.
I was like, this is really strange. But they all were either in bands, music on the side. There's like this whole thing going on. I was like, why aren't they in jobs that they love? None of them were, but it was pretty scary. I mean, you know, Friday or whatever day it was, Thursday, I think, was payout day. Where I worked, it was one of the first offices that had to have full-on screens because you were going to get dragged over the counter. It was a real education. But yeah, I don't know where it came from, being different. I just knew what I knew what I wanted to do. I knew what I didn't want to do, but the specifics of what that was that I wanted to do weren't clear. I just knew that, unlike my dad, I did not want to have a job that I hated. Unlike my mum, I didn't want a job where I felt undervalued. I could see it. And even then I thought, life's too short. I need to be able to, I was just impatient all the time. I don't know where that came from.
That's incredible. Like, you just had this whole different energy about you.
But I think I was indulged, right? So my mum in particular, she would look at me and say, there's nothing you can't do. I didn't believe her because I would look around and I'd see teenage parents, like some people getting into crime, not being able to get out of it, people with really bad health issues, which just cut short what their ambitions were. You know, we had a cousin who literally just dropped dead on the football pitch.
Wow.
Young black guy. And he was young. He was like 27. None of us understood why. So, you know, and that was a defect in his heart. So there's like all these things going around you which told you that, well, no, that's not quite true. You can't, you know, there are some things that you just can't do, either physical or because the opportunity is not offered to you. But she did not believe that. She, like, to the scariest level, you know, she would have 3 jobs on the go and then suddenly announce to us, I've got an idea. And we go, oh no, this is like bad. Got an idea. I'm going to open a shop. There's so many churches around here. People, like the women, they need hats, and I'm going to export it to Jamaica. I'm going to do this. And we were like, there's literally about 2 hours left in your day. How is this going to work? But she did do it. You know, she ran it for a couple of years, but she was that sort of person. So although it wasn't explicit, I think there was a thing that was, again, if you want it, you have to do it. I haven't got some trust fund or connections or whatever. You're going to have to do it. And I think with a bit of luck, I bumped into the right people who, like I did art school for a year and I was surrounded by incredible people who, you know, very, very good friends. And they would look at me as a young woman rather than a young black woman. And they would say, yeah, what do you want to do? And I go, well, I don't know. And they go, photography, art. Do you want to be in a band?
Yeah.
We're gonna do a punk band. Do you want to be in it? I'd be like, who do they think? Why do they think I can do this?
But do you think that you were shining some type of light that other people could see that you hadn't necessarily seen yet? And maybe that's why your mum was like, you can do anything. That's why the people at the art school were like, do you want to do this, that, and the third?
I think all mothers will see a special light. Anyway, all mothers will look to their children and go, there is something special and unique about you. So I don't think it's any more than motherly love and support. I definitely don't think there was a light, because like I said, there were moments where I could have gone left or right. It could have been whatever.
Yeah.
But I was just exposed to, like, my dad's record collection was just awesome. He had, you know, I mean, we're talking loads of albums and you could hold things and really feel connected to them. But you could go from Miles Davis to Cream to Beatles to Stones to Bob Marley. I mean, it was like, to, you know, U-Roy to, I mean, it was really like, this is so eclectic. So maybe there's something about, you know, on a Sunday morning where that was his time to get over night shift and basically play what he wanted. Maybe there's something about, you can be exposed to anything, you can do anything, you know. Maybe that's it. But I think I am right when I say, like, talent is everywhere. It's just opportunity isn't everywhere. Mm-hmm. And if you get the two to line up, then amazing things can happen. And I definitely think that sometimes with opportunity, you definitely need luck. You need allies. You need talent. You need all of it. And it's like sometimes the disappointment is, like, as we go about our business, is that we can see the talent, but all the other bits haven't quite locked in.
Yeah.
And so someone they are working hard, they have got talent, but they haven't got the other little bits that just mean they get a moment to get through the crack.
Yeah.
It's not about just being brilliant. I mean, you can have a genius person, they have no luck. doesn't happen.
Yeah. All too many stories of the greatest player you played football with that never made it as a footballer, or the greatest musician that you've ever seen but never made it as
That's right.
as a artist.
Totally.
So those Sunday mornings with your dad, do you think that that's where you cultivated your love for music and your relationship with music?
Yeah, I mean, our house was a strange mixture of kind of Motown meets SNL meets. I mean, it was just music all the time, really. And so the idea, I mean, if someone had said to me when I lived at home, "Oh, we don't really like music," I would have been very suspicious, because I would have been like, I literally don't understand. Music is like, it's in you.
It's like the fabric of life.
Yeah, it's like you can say you don't like this piece of music compared to that piece of music, but to actually actively say, "Oh, I don't really like music," is quite alien. So I would say through music, I got exposed to just different ways of thinking. We never had one style of music. And we, you could go from, like, my mother listened to quite a bit of gospel, but she wasn't particularly religious, not then. But it was because she would describe to us, like, the spirituality of the music was like soul.
Yeah.
And so you just get that breakdown of what is this music doing to you. So she would say, we'd go, "Oh, you're going religious." She'd go, no, it's really moving me. So you get to understand quite early that music is this super powerful thing. It can make your mind see things. It can make your heart feel things. It can take you to another place. Fantastic lyrics that paint a real picture. And you can use it as a tool. If you're sad, you play happy stuff. If you're sad and you want to feel sadder, you play sadder. But it can do this stuff, and it's immediate. And I think growing up, especially like being allowed to experience music together with either of my parents, that was where I just got to understand music could take you to different places. But even then, I would say it was only in my late 20s that I got to understand, well, mid-20s, that I got to understand that there's a whole host of jobs in music. I literally remember saying one day, "You mean I could be paid for that?" I couldn't believe it.
Wow.
And that was when I was a journalist, and I don't know how it happened, but I got a work experience at the BBC. In fact, I must have been a teenager. I got work experience, and their news program. They said, "Oh, part of the experience, you can sit on a program and see how they come up with ideas." And all their ideas were terrible. I just thought, right, this is a program which is talking to young people like me. I was like, these are all terrible.
Yeah.
And I told them, and they were like, "Really?" Right? And what ideas have you got? And I just rattled off a few, and I think one was good. And they were like, "Well, you do it then." I was like, "Okay, I've got to do it now." So I went and did it, and then that turned into like some freelance work. And then I thought, right, I'm going to learn how to do this properly. So I went to college, which was sponsored by the BBC. And even then I knew that, again, you might have a bit of talent. So someone's noticed you've got something about you and they've gone, right, go off, you do it. But I knew, again, from my parents, it's like, that's not enough. You have to be better than anyone in the group, because no one's going to just give you a job. And if they do, be suspicious. So that's why I had the opening, I had the freelance, I had the work. I was like, no, I'm going to go and do the training so that everyone, I can just say, look, I've got the qualification.
So as you started to move into that space, you started...
Proper work.
you started to realize that, you could actually make a living from working in music. You've had that experience. Breaking into broadcasting as a woman of colour at that time couldn't have been very easy for you.
It wasn't, but there's a two-way thing going on. You're in London, and especially somewhere like the BBC, they look around their boardroom, they look around their production,
Yeah.
they look around their commissioning. There is no one that looks like me.
Yeah.
And it's at a time, you know, late 80s, 90s, noughties, where the music that's having influence on UK culture is a different colour.
Yeah.
So how are you going to authentically like connect?
Yeah.
You know, and it's like as the really crass way of looking at it is they will have someone of color in front of them that they understand. It's that blunt, right? So they can do business with me. So I can take advantage of that. They're not really having to work very hard. They're not having to. It's like if you take a kid who's only ever worked in sort of the podcast online world. And they've only done it from their bedroom.
Yeah.
They've never worked in an office. You take a kid like that with talent and you put them in a big corporation like the BBC, which is like floors and floors of people in suits, people who've gone to university, people who have no problem walking into a crowded room and being heard. You put that kid in that scenario and they have to learn very quickly how to thrive.
Yeah.
Because otherwise their confidence gets crushed. And it's like what a lot of companies are doing, including mine, is to put in place training, nurturing, to make sure that the way people are onboarded doesn't like squash them. So they don't walk in and go, oh my God, this is like joining a bank and then like just don't thrive. But when I joined, no one thought like that. They didn't think like, what do I need to be able to make sure this person feels like they're welcome? So the only thing that helped was I was already exposed to the idea that I could be anything. I could be anyone. But back then I would say I was definitely less confident with showing all of me. And when I walked into the studio, I'm just being me with you. This is how I am.
Yeah.
But then it would be much more cautious, careful about every single word that I said, and like no rocking of the boat, nothing like that.
Were you shy then? Because, you know, having got to know you, you're quite quiet, reserved, and I'd say to a degree quite shy. Like seeing you
I am.
receive your award at the Since '93
I don't
dinner.
like going on the stage.
You were really shy and really bashful about going up and getting on
That
stage.
is my natural habitat.
Were you shy then? And how did you navigate that at that time when you were trying to prove yourself and move into
Because
a situation that wasn't
and
comfortable?
learned, right? So even at school, I could tell that the popular kids were the ones who almost performed their way through school. So believe it or not, although I am shy and I don't like attention, my junior school and definitely primary and the beginning of my secondary, people would describe me as someone who was the funniest person in the class. That is not me, right? But to survive, that's what I did.
Yeah.
I was quite a geeky looking kid, and I used humor to that meant that I could talk to all the different groups.
Yeah.
I could talk to black kids, I could talk to the Asian kids, I could talk to the working class white kids, I could talk to the posh kids, I could talk to all of them because they were like, oh, Lorna's funny.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was never extrovert, but I could take on a persona. And I think that's why I was able to go from somewhere like the BBC and then work at EMAP with Kiss FM with a largely male team. I could do that because I could literally put on a different persona and go, right, what is required here? Like, if I want 40 odd presenters on a Kiss FM schedule to do what is required, they've all got their different, I mean, that's like 40 odd egos all in one room. Then how do I make sure that they know I'm running the schedule? It's like you have to take on a persona. It's like, that doesn't mean I have to do something in an inauthentic way, I would say most people have several facets to their main personality that is healthy. If you have one facet and you're like that all the time, something very bad is going to
Probably
happen.
very boring as well.
Well, you're either very boring or you're going to kill people. It's like there's something, you know, most people have a range going on all the time, and you call on it when you need to.
Yeah.
I just figured out how to do that very early.
Yeah.
Basically, maybe that's to do with the fact that, you know, I was saying I had to be sort of in charge, and I was sort of looking after the family from quite young because my dad was doing night shift, but my mum has always been quite sick. So we all had sort of caring duties. She had severe epilepsy and it was quite scary. So as a young, you know, a young kid, like age 8, 9, 10, I'd see quite scary epileptic sort of, you know, fit, where as a kid it's quite scary, rolling eyes, frothing mouth, you know, and you collapse. And she would collapse in all sorts of ways. She'd collapse on the zebra crossing on the way to school, and I'd have to sort of deal with it. Or she'd collapse backwards in the kitchen, the glass door to the garden.
Wow.
And you'd have to take glass out of her. So, like, from a very early age, it's kind of practical. What have you got to do? It's not nice, but how do you practically deal with this?
Yeah.
That was always there.
You touched on Kiss, and how did you end up at Kiss following your stint at the BBC? And
because that is a kind of
that's a complete, you know,
gear change.
And you know, you were instrumental in Kiss in the 90s, turn that into a cultural powerhouse, essentially. What was the vision you had for the station when you joined?
Well, when I joined, I was not senior. I was not the most important person. The person who really made that brand what it is Gordon McNamee, because Gordon McNamee kind of owned the brand pre-legal when it was, you know, a pirate.
Yeah.
And he had all the pioneering ideas about how do you make money from this brand when everyone else was like suffering, having no money. He was the first cash-rich pirate because they were running so many club nights and they were a brand, you know. And they were, I remember the Evening Standard running a poll of who should get the license, and they were like, this pirate needs to get it. First time around, they didn't get it.
Went to a jazz
jazz
station,
or Choice?
I think.
Jazz, but they didn't get it. And they applied again and they did get it. I wasn't working with them then. I had nothing to do with, you know, getting the license.
Yeah.
So when they finally got the license, because there were people talking to me about, oh, you should, you know, you're really into music. You could do music and radio and work with these people. And I was like, why would I leave like a staff job? I've got a mortgage. Why would I leave that and go and work for a pirate when I don't know if I'm going to be paid? I'm like, I don't really what are you talking about? And then they got it. And then they advertised for a job which at the time was producer speech. That in itself tells you the ambition of this brand. They were a dance music station originally, and it was kind of like, no, we're going to have a talk and speech section.
Yeah.
They could have just played music all day. And I was at the World Service and I had loads of people going, you should go for it. So I applied, and they called me for an interview, which was in Seven Sisters, and sat down. Gordon McNamee was there, and I forget who the other person was, and they did the interview and I got it. And then I was like, okay, now what do I do with this job? But it was quite formal how it worked, but I used to go to a lot of their club nights, especially Trevor Mad Hatter back then, and I would just be described as, you know, the woman from the BBC. So I didn't know I was going to work there. I've said this before to people. I've never had a career plan. I've never sat down, and sat down and said, right, A-levels, degree, MA, this, that. Nope, never had that. It's always been this thing that goes back to my dad. I don't want a job that I either will not enjoy or that
Yeah.
I'll be ashamed of. I'm
Yeah.
not, the amount of time, whenever I've changed jobs, is because I can kind of feel that if I stay there too long, I will be the person in the corner rocking, wearing a cardigan, going, it's not like the old days.
Do you
And I
feel
won't do that
do you feel like people don't do that enough, recognize
when it's
when
time
they're
to
not
go.
happy and it's time to
Yeah.
move on?
Yeah, I see it at the BBC. The BBC is a very kind of luxurious place to be right now in the media. We have guaranteed income. And okay, we're not as big as we want to be, but we have guaranteed income and we belong to everybody.
Yeah.
And unlike an independent company or, a startup, or it's like we can make decisions which says, okay, we've got this guaranteed money. We'll save for this year, build a treasure chest so that we can survive for the next 5 years. So a lot of the companies that I work with, especially on the TV side, they're properly struggling. And it's like, it's hard out there. If you're a freelancer, it's really hard. But there are people at the BBC who are so privileged that they literally, from the first year they get in, start making a plan where it says, I'll be here for 30 years.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have quite a few people who I know who are coming up to doing their 35th, 40th year. Nothing wrong with that. Long experience, deep experience is valued. But if it's in exactly the same job, I would be suspicious. So I've been there for decades, but I've done so many different jobs.
Yeah.
And I've had time out and then come in. But I think you can kind of justify it by saying, oh, I'll stay there forever because I love it. But are you still growing? So your question, do enough people recognize the kind of ticking clock and go, am I still enjoying it? Am I still good for it? No, they don't, because things get in the way, like life.
Absolutely.
Children, mortgage, this, and you're like, I can't move. But sometimes you have to.
Absolutely. Touching back on Kiss, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced while building the Kiss brand? And what did you learn during that period that has shaped you and helped you become the leader that you are today?
So, biggest thing is that it's teamwork. I didn't build the brand. I would never say that I built the brand. I had a fairly junior job when I got there as producer, and then got promoted up and ended as a director, which again, when I went into the company, I never thought one day I'm going to be a director, because I didn't know I literally didn't know what a board member meant, but I'd say the things I learned, again, you have to be, whatever the role is, you got to be better than anyone. They can have no fault with your work. Number one. Number two, you've got to be pleasant to work with. Because if you're like a genius, but a complete then no one's going to want to work with you. So outside of my direct department, I would always try and just be friends with people, because then I'd understand. So I had friends in sponsorship, because I don't know what sponsorship is. And then I'd find out, oh, that's what it is. I'd have friends with sales, friends with marketing. In fact, one of my dearest friends now was the director of marketing back then, who I'm still friends with. And so that what I learned back then was you could, oh my gosh, you could get introduced to different elements of business, not by doing it, but by just hanging out with people and going, because if you're not doing the job, if I can say to someone who's a mate, I don't really know how marketing works. What are you trying to do? That's a great introduction, because then you're armed with the right questions, rather than going, sometimes people say you have to do a course for everything.
Yeah.
But there's a little bit of prep before that, so that by the time you're ready to do a course, you are dipped into the right language, if you like.
So what about the people that say go into a work environment, say, I'm not here to make friends, I'm here to deliver.
That's crazy.
You think that's crazy?
Yeah,
Okay.
I do. I think they've watched too many movies, and real life isn't like that, because you can, maybe it's the use, maybe the use of friends is the thing that they are shying away from, because you can have professional acquaintances. Friends almost suggest we're going on holiday.
Yeah.
I would agree with them. You're
Yeah.
not there to do that, but you are not there to be, cold, unapproachable.
Yeah.
It's like everybody, however brilliant they are, needs allies. You just do. You need someone who, if you're not in the room and they're talking about something which you might be a decent candidate, you want someone to be able to say, what about Ben? Because you're not always going to be in the room. You're too busy saying, I'm not here making friends.
Yeah,
It's like, that's why you need acquaintances, because they will have a fond way of saying they should get a break. You can't be everywhere. You don't know all the conversations. How can you?
Yeah, very true. So a lot of talent from Kiss ended up at the BBC. You ended up back at the BBC, and then a lot of talent.
Well, they all gone, and I have to join them. Literally, I remember having that conversation with Trevor. I mean, Trevor Nelson, Dave Pearce, Judge Jules. It was, a great guy called Wilberforce, who was a brilliant producer.
Name.
Oh, he was
such a great name.
I mean, clearly, it's not his real name, but he was so creative. He was the only person I knew, a young black guy who, John Peel, really important broadcaster, would say, we all need to be more Wilberforce, because he was like the sharpest dresser you could. And it wasn't expensive. He just had a way.
Yeah.
And he always looked like that. And he had a particular way of looking at the world. He was a fantastic, musicologist. But yeah, he went, Paul Thomas went. There were a lot of people who went from, but it was because of timing. BBC Radio 1 needed to reinvent itself. It was supposed to be for young people, but they were playing status quo. And it's kind of, at the time, that acid house was huge.
Yeah.
We were playing happy hardcore at 8 o'clock in the morning on Kids. And everyone's like, what are you doing? We're like, because these kids haven't gone to bed yet.
Yeah.
They're like, that's what they want. And so Radio 1 had to reinvent itself. And the easiest way, rather than taking 10 years to create the next Trevor Nelson or the next Judge Jules, they just poached. And literally every week, my door would knock of my office at Kiss. Someone would go, don't, I'll finish the sentence. You're going to Radio 1.
Yeah.
Every single time. It's flattering, but it's hard work, because I was literally running to find it. And then in the end, I think on their second attempt, the first attempt, they offered me a job and I turned it down. The second attempt, I was like, okay, this is a meaty role. I'll go back.
Okay. So you went back to the BBC. Speaking of Trevor, who you mentioned just now, I had Trevor Nelson speak at one of our Power Up events. And for
brilliant.
those tuning in, for the first time, Power Up is an initiative that we created to support black talent move into senior executive spaces within the UK music industry. And Trevor came and gave a keynote. And one of the things he said, and I'll quote this, is, when Lorna leaves the BBC, that's when I'm going to quit broadcasting.
Oh, I love him for that.
What does that kind of loyalty and respect mean to you from a broadcaster such as Trevor Nelson and others who speak of you in similar fondness?
It's so mutual, because I think I am blessed that if I think the first time I sort of experienced the power of Trevor was going to a club night, because I'm pretty square. I know I like music and I love fashion, but they don't always love me. So I'm like, I follow all the trends, and I'm like, so I had one cool friend, and she knew we used to go to lick parties that MTV used to
Yeah.
do. It was all these different things. And I remember going and I'm like, how does he know what to play? How does he know? I'm someone, I can't dance, but he will play music and I'm on the dance floor and people will be literally going, what are you doing, Lorna? And I'll go, he made me do it. So there's a mutual respect there because Trevor has so much talent, which broadly comes from his deep experience with clubs. But what I saw with Trevor was he's really, really smart. He's a really clever guy. He's very, very self-aware and he understands what the brand Trevor Nelson is all about. So he won't do anything to like compromise that. But what that can mean is that you kind of go, this is the guardrails. This is what I'm good with. That's it. I don't need to do anything else. And each time that I've sort of stepped to him and went, I think you could do the breakfast show, or I think you could move to this show bigger. And it sort of takes him a little bit further away from core sort of clubland. He's trusted me. He could have just gone like, no, it's fine, go somewhere else, get someone else. But he's sort of gone, oh, you're doing it again.
That's what he said about his move to Radio 2 daytime. That's why he made the comment that you made. He said, well, I trusted Lorna to move to Radio 2 daytime, but when she goes, I go.
I said to him, it's time. It's time. It's kind of in 2024. Well, there's two ways of looking at it. In 2024, with my long history in broadcast, in terms of the career, am I really going to be in a position where an opportunity comes up and I don't try and change the way mainstream broadcast looks? Is that really going to be the case? Now, sometimes you do have to wait for an opportunity because I am not going to be firing people to put the right kind of person in there. That does not work. But when an opportunity presents itself, there's an opening and there's someone I know can do it, not because they're mates or because they look like me or they literally have all the qualifications to do it. I'm blessed. I'm like, I can do that. So we will have two people of colour in daily shows because Spoonie will take over Trevor's slot. And it's like Radio 2 forever has never had that.
Well, this is what I was going to ask you in terms of, and we are jumping ahead a little bit and we'll go back in a moment, but just in terms of the vision of Radio 2, because when Trevor said I'm going to be doing daytime Radio 2, it kind of spun my head. And again, for the listeners that might not be aware, Radio 2 has the biggest listenership
in the country,
across the UK.
Yeah.
And has traditionally been kind of known as the station that plays, I'm going to say the oldies, right? Mm-hmm. And appeals to a much older kind of audience.
It's not one extra.
No, not at all. It's as far from one extra as you can get. And you might like
hear BBC One to, Netflix. It's like, it's the very heart of the UK. It's like the average age is 54-ish. But it appeals to all adults, everyone over 35. But the power of Radio 2 and the reason it's important is because every single week it is talking to 13.5 million every week.
Wow.
So those aren't my numbers. That's not me going, that is independent quarterly research that measures all of the industry. And so sometimes you'll read about, all these other stations doing really well. They are, and they're growing very, very quickly. But Radio 2 is still the biggest.
And that's the one to always
beat.
Has been.
Always has. I mean, it's challenged. It's like if you're top of the league and you keep seeing these people come, it's like that. They're just nipping at our heels all the time. But it's huge.
Yeah. So with that, bringing a Trevor in for daytime, bringing in a Spoonie, what is your vision for Radio 2?
To be more representative of how we live now. If you do it too soon, you kind of risk putting back whatever development you want to make. It's like, now is the time, because we have broadcasters like Trevor and Spoonie, and Sarah Cox and Zoe. There are people who they've got the years of experience. It's like, we're just in a really interesting space. And for me, it goes back to that whole thing of, if the opportunity's there and the person's there, you'd have to be blind to not see this is the time that it could happen.
Yeah.
So for me, it was kind of, especially at this point in my career, I was just super excited. I was like, right, I'm going to have to talk to Trevor. I didn't tell anyone. I was like, I'm going to have to talk to Trevor. I know something's coming up. I know there's an opening coming up. I knew that, Zoe was thinking about a time to move on. And I was like, right, we've got to be ready. But you have to do these things in the right order. And I think he does trust me. And he just went, oh, okay. But it's not so much, it's not like a vision of, I want the station to be X, Y, and Z. I want it to be relevant. It's got to be relevant. It's kind of some of the music that Trevor, in his clever, elegant way, can introduce to a very centre of England audience, who will happily celebrate Elvis with country music, with, chic, with, you name it. It's like you have to be very musical to be able to weave a path through that basically finds melodic pop. And melodic pop can cross all genres.
Yeah.
Melodic pop includes Bob Marley. Melodic pop includes Lauryn Hill. It's like, there's a way of deftly doing that.
Yeah.
Herbie Hancock. It's like, there's two sides to Herbie. There's deep Herbie.
Yeah.
There's pop Herbie.
Yeah.
But you have to know Herbie to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And if you've got a musical person like Trevor, you can trust him to introduce the melodic new stuff together with playing the pop hits.
Yeah.
And that's the job. It's not to go in and scare people and go, right, I'm in town. We're only going to do this.
Yeah.
And so if there's any vision at all, it's about making that really big fat audience feel like they are being nurtured, as well as being introduced to things they didn't know they would like. And it's a long, sometimes, you might have a show that's got 30 records in it, and there's only one that you've been allowed to introduce that might not be in the usual folder. But that one record might be a deep cut from Stevie Wonder.
Mm-hmm.
So they think they know all of Stevie Wonder because they listen to Stevie Wonder on high rotation. But only Trevor will know which deep cut is actually going to work 2 records away from a Spice Girls track.
Yeah.
It's like, you've got to be really musical to be able to do that. So that's the thing that's quite exciting, is that after a year, because it's that sort of time it takes, after a year, how seamless would that sound to have someone with his musical background right in the center of the schedule?
Wow. And your kind of take on the way that you do this, is that something that you learned, earlier on at KISS, or whilst you were kind of at Radio 1 overseeing Bon Extra Asian Network, or is that something that's developed through your role as director of music? How have you kind of come to this understanding of how to insert a DJ, the kind of timeline it takes, and the effect that DJ would have?
So I'd say everywhere that I've worked has been like, it's about exciting change. I don't think any job I've had has been about me going in and things staying exactly the same. I've been given a job because they've said, can you fix it or make it or change it. That's been the case for Electric Proms. It didn't exist before, and they were like, you need to create this thing. Or at One Extra, where Trevor was, and I got him and Gemma Kearney to present the breakfast show. He wasn't doing the breakfast show. He was quite happy. He was like, you are asking me to get up early every single day and do the breakfast show and basically be the lead show with all of that responsibility. And by the way, I'm not giving up my club career. So, and I went, yeah, pretty much I am asking you to do that. So at each place that I've been, Kiss, World Service, Radio 1, Radio 2, Six Music, wherever it is, to make my reason for taking any job is to make it better rather than make it the same. So how can I make it better? And if I can make it better and that means change, then I'll walk towards it. Not everyone's like that. Some people don't like walking towards change. It's quite, disconcerting, but it doesn't really bother me. It's like change is good. Next year I've got a new breakfast show on our classical music station, which starts next year. They haven't had change there for decades. We've got a new breakfast show on Radio 2. It's like, sometimes you have to be quite pragmatic. So I'd say every different job that I've had has taught me a bit more about how do you plan for change. And you do have to plan. It's like sometimes change is imposed on you and you've got no control. People leave, they die, they close it down, whatever. The change just happens and then you have to deal with it. But then there's change that you plan. And whenever you get more opportunities to plan the change, means that you have a sort of formula of how to deal with the change that is imposed on you. And the thing that I've learned is no matter how dramatic the change might be that you have to deal with, you have to sketch out a plan. You have to kind of go, what am I trying to do? So with Trevor in Daytime, it's like, what are we trying to do here? We're trying to make the best radio station possible. What does it require right now? Understanding the listeners, understanding who we're talking to, but making it exciting. Okay, where do those ingredients lie? There. How do we get from there to there? And then sometimes you have to then go into even more detail, which is how long will it take? How do you announce? Who do you have to worry about? It's like if you were a football manager. You look at the team playing and you go, that striker is not striking. And then you look around the team and you either go, can I put a winger in there? Can I move it internally? Yeah. How much disruption is that? Or actually they've all been playing together for so long that you need a bit of disruption. So you can't just reshuffle people. You have to get someone in.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you put someone in from outside, the ripples of the new means everyone lifts up.
Yeah.
And at the BBC, for me, that is very important because people work there for a long time, but they're good at the job. And again, you don't want to penalise people because they have deep experience. But sometimes if you just change one part of the team, everyone gets refreshed. Because the danger sometimes with leaders is that they go into a company and they go, oh my God, everyone's so tired and they're all giving me the same ideas and there's no spark. And like, this is meant to be really dynamic and creative. And they're like, right, we're going to shut it all down and we're going to start again from scratch. Sometimes that is not the right thing to do because A, you may not have enough time, and B, you may not have all the talent to do that. You need to look at the team and analyse where's the fellowship, who's following, who says what. And the person that they're following, either from what they say or from what they do they deserve that position? As in, are they any good? If they're not any good and they've got fellowship, you've got to pull it out, put a new one in, and invigorate the whole thing. And sometimes that is better and quicker than just going, it's all wrong. Because it can't all be wrong.
Yeah.
Not always.
So with change, you mentioned it already, the proms. you then created the Electric Proms. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and the change that you hope to create? And even with Glastonbury, the changes that you've implemented in Glastonbury to reach a wider audience.
So again, it's like, it's not just a modesty call. It's really, I thrive when I've got a great team. And a great team for me is when I know exactly what each member is good at. So if we take Glastonbury, I have TV, I play a team, on-demand music, production. I have all these different heads who are responsible for bringing the whole thing together. So when Emily Evis signs off her lineup, because she books it,
And Emily's who runs Glastonbury,
and she'll be like, "We're ready to go. This is what we got." We have several conversations over the year, and then I will look at it, and with the team, we'll go, "Okay, how are we basically going to make it easy for people to find the good stuff?" Because it's a massive festival. And I would say I'm just very collaborative. So I don't sit in a corner with the blinds down, just having lots of secret conversations. I basically say to my core team, okay, I've just gone off a call. I'm going to trust you with this. Let's kick around a few ideas. And so everybody owns it. By the time, Sunday night comes and it's the end of Glastonbury, everybody will look at everyone else and we'll go, we did it. It's always like that. It's not I did it. And that helps me because I have worked in other places where, and even at the BBC, I've had scenarios where individuals or past, senior people think the success is theirs. You've done the work, but they think it's theirs. And it's like, it doesn't work like that. But Glastonbury is very easy because it's just so big. You have to work in that way. Electric Proms was probably the opposite because it didn't exist. So I basically was given a blank piece of paper, nothing written on it. After a really grueling interview, I was interviewed. It was a panel that had controller of BBC Two, controller of Radio 1, controller of Radio 2, director of radio, and then some dude from commissioning. There's like 5 really senior people all asking me questions. I was like, this must be an important job. So you go through that, and then at the end of it, they go, off you go. So we had to decide what we were going to call it. It wasn't called the Electric Proms. We decided on the Electric Proms because it was kind of reminiscent of when Dylan went electric, where like everyone knows about music, but this event has to be on TV and radio. We're going to do a 360 kind of commission. And this was new to people back then. Now we do it all the time, right? But we're going to point our cameras and our microphones at an event that we've created in the Roundhouse. And the thing that's going to mark it out as different to other pop events is that there's going to be a unique moment, something about that performance that's different. Something. So it's not just going to be a big famous person doing what they always do. We're going to try and have a series of shows across a week where there's a unique moment you can point to in the show. So what do I mean? I mean, we booked Burt Bacharach and we convinced him to have a young singer who at the time we thought was going to be a massive star. He'd never heard of her. He said yes. It was Adele. And we had to, when we collected him from the airport, we were like, so it's all good with Adele? And he's like, who? We're like, don't tell me you've forgotten. He was like, oh, Adele, yeah. And then he was like, right, I need her to come to my hotel and I need a piano in the room. And we were like, okay, we didn't put a piano in the room. So we literally had the car journey from Heathrow to central London to get a piano waiting for when he arrived, because he was a workaholic. He was like, he was in his tracky pants with his pulley luggage and he was like, let's go. So we had to be ready. So the unique moment was this songwriting, performing legend agreed to be with Adele. And she, then we had to get on the phone to them and say, get to the hotel.
Yeah.
He just wants to run through some stuff. She knocked him out. End of. Paul Weller, he did a show with us, which was amazing. And he said, there's this girl I'm listening to a lot. Everyone's talking about her, but I really love her, Amy Winehouse. So again, before she blew up, Amy Winehouse did a spot with Paul. So we started to create this thing that had something about it, you know. Shirley Bassey, no one had seen her perform for ages. Phenomenal voice. And that was something we did for BBC Two and BBC and Radio 2, because it wasn't just the young end, it was all bits. And just a powerful voice. And her little twist was she, like, you know, in the 70s was famous for this Morecambe and Wise sketch where she comes up a stage lift, but the lift gets stuck. And that was like the comedy gag. And so for future live events, she would never have a real comedy lift, because it would be like, everyone's going to like look at the comedy thing.
Yeah, yeah.
But we got her to do it. She agreed, like we had an orchestra, and it's at the Roundhouse, and she agreed, I don't know how, but she agreed to come up, just stand there, and the stage lift came up. And at the rehearsal, I was watching it, and it was way too slow. It was like, she's going to freak out, because it looked like it was going to stop. It was, you know, when something is so painfully slow. Yeah. I was like, you've got to speed it up. And they're like, yeah, but we're scared, because if we speed it up, she might just fly off the end. But it worked. But everything had a twist. You had James Brown do the opening show for us, and his guests were Sugar Babes. So it's kind of, for me, the Electric Proms was very much like, it was my name on the door. I've never been so terrified, really, because up until that point and beyond, my career was always about building the right teams so that you all thrive and do things like really amazingly. Yeah. But because this was like, you're creating it, you're naming it, you know, it's in your name. And basically the BBC's like, well, if it fails, it's down to you. It's like, if it thrives, it's down to you. But they were nervous because, like, who am I?
And how do you feel that's impacted your career, being responsible for something like that that's gone from strength to strength, you know, seen it in Royal Albert Hall, and it's just grown and become this thing that is quintessentially British as well?
Well, there's two things going on. The classical Proms has been going for 100 years. And obviously I'm not 100. And what I did was say, the BBC's known for that, but we're more than classical. Yeah. I do not understand why we don't have a companion. And at the time, the people running classical were very anti the Electric Proms. Yeah. They actively said, we don't want that, and you can't call it the Proms.
Wow.
Because that confuses people. And I just ignored them because they were wrong and I was right. And what happened...
We love that, by the way.
What happened afterwards was the Electric Proms was never a thing that should have carried on forever. In a way, it was a disruptor. I kind of was, you know, given this opportunity to run this thing and prove that's how you could do it. We got amazing reviews, like front covers of Time Out and this and that. Really people excited about it. But I knew it couldn't carry on forever. And the point came when the classical Proms started incorporating more often pop moments. So it's now totally not unusual out of 89, 90 shows to have a handful, 1, 2 or 3 pop related Proms that the classical team build and do brilliantly. And it's not weird. So Sam Smith is fine, you know. But that was the influence of be a disruptor, make the most of the resources that you have, and prove all the people that say you can't do it because we've never done it wrong. And they would have to tell me that to my face, and I'd just ignore them because I did have allies. I made sure that right at the top of the organisation, I could look people in the eye. And when... in fact, the then director of marketing, who is now the director general of the whole of the BBC. I remember he called me over to his office in White City, and he just got this job, I think, as director of marketing. We didn't know each other, and we were about to launch the electric proms, and he said, I need to just look you in the eye and ask you about the electric proms. And he went, you do realise it can't fail.
No pressure.
And I thought, okay, this is what it means to take on a high profile project.
Yeah.
That's what people will say to you, because it's not just my reputation at stake.
Yeah.
It's his reputation, because he's got to market it.
Yeah.
And it's not just his reputation, it's the people in the TV channels. If it doesn't get ratings, it doesn't matter how great I think it is to have, James Brown and Burt Bacharach and all. If it doesn't work, they all have like a negative thing on their slate.
Yeah.
So it's high stakes, but the more you get asked and the more you get told, you do realise this can't fail, don't you? The more rehearsed you get at answering that question in your mind, it won't fail because I've thought it all through and I'm confident. And for the shows that I wasn't confident about, nobody could have saved them. I mean, basically.
How do you navigate pressure like that, knowing that not only is it your neck on the chopping block, but you've got all these other people who potentially could have a
lot of
negative
responsibility.
mark? How do you navigate that type
I don't
of pressure?
worry. People often say that they will see me in a high pressured scenario and they know my legs are going underneath, but you never see it. And it goes back to when I was a kid, being this sort of comedian, the person who was like, thought their job was to make everyone laugh and to keep it all calm, even though I wasn't. I just draw on that. It's like panic begets panic. If you're like running around like a headless chicken and screaming and, really in on the detail on everyone's work, like that just discombobulates everyone.
Yeah.
But if you are calm and with a real pincer movement, you just go to the problem. All of this is good, but can you just tell me what's happening here? Then I think you get better results. But for me, it's like, I do get nervous. You've seen me nervous at awards things. I do get nervous. I get sweaty palms and, but what I've realised is if you do the prep, like if I have to do a speech, which I don't want to do, I will spend time writing it, rehearsing it. I'll get a buddy and rehearse it. And then have a moment to reflect. Is it as bad as I think? No, it's okay. It's good. I just do the prep. If I'm really nervous and I haven't done the prep, things will go wrong and it will be disaster. So if I'm in a scenario where I've got a lot of responsibility and there's a lot of people who are going to ask me loads of questions and they're full of fear, what are you going to do? How's that going to work? All of that. I've just got to have the answers. And I know that when I answer them, I can literally see their shoulders go down. They're like, it's going to be fine. So when they say, it can't fail, right? I can literally go, I've booked this. I'm going to give you an exclusive. I've also booked this. No one knows about that. And you can see them going, ooh, that's fine.
So who do you go to for support in those moments where you feel like, oh my God, what am I doing? How's this going to work out? Because I remember I've always kind of been like, well, who does Lorna turn to? Because, some of us can turn to you and
it's a good question.
You're in a certain space, but you're the only person that looks like you in that space. And I think at the dinner that Since 93 did for you, I remember seeing Jackie Davison there. And I remember thinking, I'm so glad she's got Jackie Davison. And for those that don't know, Jackie Davison is a very, very successful manager that who's everybody's auntie in the music industry.
He tells me to do something or to go somewhere. I'll be like, okay, tell me about it.
Yeah.
And she'll explain. I go, okay, got it. So I don't think we've ever had to have a conversation about professional advice. She definitely doesn't need that from me, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It's not that sort of conversation. It's just I know she's there.
Yeah.
So Professionally, the honest answer is that when you are a very senior executive, there's no getting around it. It is lonely.
Yeah.
There is whatever color. There's no one else who does color or gender. There's no one that has a job like mine because there's only one BBC, and there's only they're similar, but they don't have the complexities of public service and commercial. It's complex, so it is lonely. But you have to work out your own sort of coping mechanism, if you like. So for me, I always say to my team, if you're thinking of impressing me by saying you haven't had any leave, you don't go on holiday, I won't be impressed, because you're basically not managing your life properly. So for me, the higher up you go, the better you have to be at managing work and not work. So I love taking my break. I love knowing that I can work full on and know that I've got an escape, because when I'm not working, I'm not fretting about all the other stuff. That's number one. Number two is you can have allies that are nothing to do with the business. And so I have a very good couple of friends who understand how broadcast works, but they, like, one is in film, and they're outside the BBC, and I can sort of just sketch a scenario which is giving me a headache, and just by saying it, I realise it's not that big a deal because they've already switched off. So it's not a compelling story. And that helps. So having trusted people that you can just spout off is good. And just getting the balance right. I mean, you know, when I worked at KISS, I didn't really have a life. I just worked all the time. It's not healthy, you know. I remember I had a boyfriend who did not understand why my mobile phone always went off at like 3 a.m, randomly through the week. And I would answer it. He could be like, why are you answering it? I'd say, the DJ's just told me that they're on the way back from a club night and they messed up. They can't get to the live studio in time. Their show is on at 4 a.m. or 3 a.m. or 2 a.m. And I've now got to ring someone else to quickly get to Highbury and go on air.
Yeah.
And he'd be like, what kind of job is that? I go, well, there's no one else. I have to do it. That was wrong. That was really wrong. And you shouldn't have to live like that.
Why was that wrong?
Because I didn't recognize early enough that what I had to do was either put something in place that meant, you know, one strike and you're out, for example. How can it be that someone is all like every couple of months always late back from a club night? The club night is nothing to do with me. That's their private life. Yeah. But I didn't. I was trying to stretch and make everything work. That's number one. I should have had something in place rather than trying to keep everyone happy. And then number two, I should have spoken up earlier and said, every week I get a phone call at 3 a.m. And just taking it higher. But I would have thought then that it looked like some sort of weakness and that I couldn't cope. It's nothing to do with that.
Do you think that young executives suffer from that a lot, that they don't want to look weak? And what's the advice you give to a young executive that finds themselves in that situation? Not necessarily a 3 a.m. call, but they're taking things on because they don't want to look weak and they want to prove that I can do this, and no matter what comes my way, I can do this. I've been guilty of this myself.
So how did you deal with it?
I guess I just did it. I just got it done. I didn't want to look weak.
Okay. Well, that's fine if it doesn't kill you. There are certain times when you do have to kind of run at it and just do it, and people go, oh, okay, we can lift the notch up now. You are able to do it. But you can't live like that all the time, because you'll just exhaust yourself, and it's not a very fulfilling position. You've just got to gauge, when is it a stretch and when is it literally going to kill you. And sometimes if you don't recognize when it's going to kill you, you will do more damage, because you'll run at something and you'll keep doing it and you'll be failing and everyone can see that you're failing, but you're sticking at it, and you don't want that. And sometimes it's better to say, I'm not quite cut out for that, but I could do this. You will know if you can deliver on something you've never done. I've definitely been in scenarios where I've said, yes, I can do something, and I don't actually have any proof that I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I have delivered it. And at those moments, I needed to say I could do it. You know, I did a whole series of outside broadcasts live with Kiss with each of our breakfast shows when I'd never done an international outside broadcast. And they had a sponsor, and they were like, we're going to sign this deal with the sponsor. Can you do it? And I was like, yeah, sure. Put the phone on. I was like, oh my God, we don't have an engineer.
Yeah.
But we did it. But there must have been enough there for me to say I know how to do it. So it's like, it's making sure you're not making foolhardy promises, because you will be found out. That's the thing. You will be found out. And that can be more damaging. But taking a chance on yourself, that's not bad. That's fine. It's just, you just got to be measured and really understand the responsibility that you're taking on, and that you're not putting anyone, including yourself, in danger.
How do you spot talent that can go from, being an early promising talent through to someone that is super successful? You've brought in so much talent over the years that's gone on to be uber successful. How are you able to spot that, and what is the thing that you look for?
Well, now you're sounding a bit like Simon Cowell. What is the X factor?
What's the X factor?
I've been in the business for so long now, and it's like age 62 with several decades of like career behind you. There's a lot of people that you meet day in and day out. And so you kind of hone your listening and what you see, I think. And I've just got better at being able to see. I can tell by the way people carry themselves. I can spend, 15 minutes with someone, and I can figure out whether they are serious about wanting to be the best they can be and open to learning, or whether they're blagging it. I can tell.
Yeah.
So, like, sometimes you make decisions where you're actually hiring on potential, and there's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes, and I have done this occasionally where I've hired on potential. I know they're not quite there yet. I know there are things that need to be sort of polished up, but you sort of go, well, if I get to know them, I might see more of their personality, and they might really fight for it and go for it. And sometimes that's worked. But there are other people, they just got something about them where you just go, I've never met anyone like that.
Yeah.
And you can tell there are plenty of young people that I've met who, if I think about how I was when I was their age, they are way, way ahead.
Yeah.
Very confident, charming, smart, well-read, and they have a sort of resilience which tells me that if they trip at the first hurdle, they will be fine. If someone is very, very thin-skinned but has a lot of talent, when they're put in a position where their talent is tested, that's quite vulnerable, because it might be that they don't survive the first test of, their whether their talent will be good enough or not. So it's talent plus something about their personality plus a sort of openness to want to get on, and you just see it. Maybe it is an X factor, but it's several things, really.
Yeah. What's your legacy? What do you want your legacy to look like? It's
too early to talk about that. I know I said I'm old, but I'm not that old. It's I don't know. I was talking to a really high level kind kind of global leader the other day, and I was properly impressed.
As you do every day.
Well, I don't actually, but this was where I forced myself to go and have lunch with them and basically thank them for some work that they did. And it's kind of, they said to me, yeah, you know, when you are in a high level job, it is very unusual to be sitting around thinking about your legacy. In fact, I'd say if you do that, it's probably time to retire, because you're like planning it. So I think you only think about your legacy when you've left and you look back and you can see it, or people tell you, they come up to you and they say, I am your legacy. I might have some people like that, because there are some super talented people who feel that I've opened the door for them and they've gone through. But it's for them to say it, really. And their career journey probably isn't finished. But I think, well, as I get older and older, this happens more and more, that I have young women and young men who come up, and it's almost like they remind me. They sort of come up to me and they remind me that I'm a Black woman from a working class background who is thriving in an almost opposite background. And they say it, because I don't think about it. And it's when they say that I go, oh. And sometimes you say it, Ben. You say to me, but Lorna, why don't? And I have to go, oh, right, yeah. I don't, because I've been for so many years, I've been like, get the job done.
Yeah.
Get on. Like, I don't sit around going, you do know I'm Black, don't you?
Yeah.
I don't do that.
Yeah.
But occasionally there will be, especially like if you get an award, I won't embarrass them, but 2 Black presenters because I've got 300 presenters, but 2 presenters, when I got the last couple of awards.
Women in Music Award.
They sent a massive bunch of flowers. They are not the biggest presenters.
Yeah.
Right? They're not the most well known. They're the youngest, actually. And they sent it, just a little note, which was like, for us. And I was so touched. Almost burst into the live studio. Like, wow. But that was when they were like, one of them said, the thing is, when I started at the BBC, I found you really scary, Lorna. I'm like, that's not a good thing to say. They went, wait. Because I'd never actually seen someone doing that job who looked like you.
Yeah.
I just couldn't get my head around it. And so I was quite wary and scared, because I thought, what have I got in common with Lorna? How can I have a conversation with her? So if I was in the lift, they wouldn't say anything. Now, of course, they're like, you're just like us. I went, yes, I am. It's the same. It's just, I've got like 40 years on you and I've done this, this and this. But actually, I keep saying to people, I am not a ninja. There's no magic kind of kung fu thing going on here where I literally go, no, it's over a long period of time. If I'd got to this position in 5 years, that's ninja talk. That's like, wow. Yeah. But no, I deserve to be here because there are all these landmarks in my career and it's long. So you could ask, how come it took so long? That's the Japanese way of saying it.
Why did it take so long?
Because I had to learn the code and rules of how to kind of get from one level to the next. And I was so focused on never lifting my head above the parapet. Always do what I need to do and do it really well. I was never out there kind of beating my chest, going, I need to have that job. It never happened like that. It was always, every single job I've had, for example, has been a job that has been advertised and I've applied for. Mm. It's not a case of someone has actively tapped me on the shoulder and said, I think this job is Lorna shaped.
Yeah.
That's only happened much later in my career, where people have said, I think this is, but I still had to apply. There was no one kind of going, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
This is yours. It's a shoe-in. Never. And so I've had lots and lots of practice of kind of going, right, what do they need to hear? How am I going to beat everyone else? Interview, let's go. It's never been this is easy. Even when I've sat on boards, it's still an interview, and I still sort of think, I might not be what they want.
Yeah. What advice would you give to the next Lorna?
Wow. I would definitely say, try not to worry so much. In total, I probably worried for a couple of years, way too long than I needed to, because actually it was always going to be fine. Don't sweat sometimes I sweat the small stuff too much. Like, I worry about the moment of walking into a room. Don't worry about it. I literally worry about it to the point where I go, okay, what am I wearing? What's my hair like? What's the impact I'm going to make? Will I know anyone in the room?
Yeah.
Like, this is going to be a nightmare. Do not worry about it. Most of the people in that room, apart from maybe 10%, all thinking the same. Even Oprah Winfrey's like that, right? They all worry about, okay, I'm going into a room full of strangers, I don't know them, so what impact am I going to make? And probably finally, I would say, just be yourself, right? You can conquer being yourself quicker and better and more consistently than trying to be someone else.
Yeah.
No question. It's like, when I was growing up, I'd try and be like someone else, because I'd be like, I think they need to behave like this, and da, da, da. But it's exhausting. It's much better to be able to be yourself always. And they take it or they don't. But that doesn't mean that you can be as rude as you want. No. Or you can be unprofessional. No. You have to be professional if you're in a professional scenario, but still be yourself. I can't be Ben. It'd be terrible. But you can't be me, but just be yourself.
Final question. We always end the podcast with what it means to be unstoppable. It's the Be Unstoppable podcast. What does it mean for Lorna Clarke to be unstoppable in your life and in your career?
They're so deep, Ben. Why are you asking such deep questions? And it's like, at the end, what does it mean to be unstoppable as Lorna Clarke?
As Lorna Clarke.
Well, it does kind of link back to the other answer, which is, to be unstoppable means I am providing solutions to things that people literally thought were insurmountable. I am the person solving it. But being unstoppable is almost like you're some kind of Jedi. They've got this challenge and like, we don't know how to do it. And then Lorna comes out and goes, that's how you do it.
Yeah.
That is like an unstoppable superpower.
Love
but
that.
Then the other bit is probably, it's a bit to do with well-being. I know there's a lot of talk about well-being, but it is important. And I mean well-being in terms of your mind and the way you think, but also just your physicality. It's like, to be unstoppable means that you get the chance to work in a space for as long as you want. And that is possible if you've got the right mindset, which is healthy, and your body is healthy. So that means that people in this business will often think, all right, well, how do you go to a gig every night, a screening, at this, like Monday to Friday is full on, and maybe every third weekend is not mine. How do you do that and stay, well, I do Pilates, because as I get older, I literally creak when I get out of bed. So I would say you've got to have a healthy mind, which means you've got to keep introducing yourself to new things, but physically you've got to look after yourself. And then you could be unstoppable.
Lorna, thank you for that answer. Thank you for giving us the time today on this podcast. It's been amazing getting insight into broadcasting, insight into your journey, some really good advice as well on how to move if you're in that space of broadcasting as well. Yeah. Navigating. It's been amazing. Thank you for all that you do for everybody at the BBC, but thank you for all that you do for us as well. The younger generation that look up to you and see you in these spaces where, as you said, there's not many people that look like you in these spaces and make us believe that it's possible.
All possible.
So thank you for that. And on that note, we're going to end it there. And for all of you tuned in, remember, you have the power to choose your path in life, but always choose to be unstoppable. Tune in for the next episode. Remember, we have our Patreon, and press that subscribe button, hit the like button, and leave us a comment. Thanks for tuning in.